in the northern Urals, where the sky and the ground blur into one endless white void, a small tent stood against a force far greater than fabric, rope, or human courage. 9 young hikers, trained, experienced, disciplined, chose to spend the night on the slope instead of descending into the shelter of the forest. At the time, it was a reasonable decision, but some decisions are not wrong. They are simply the last decisions a person ever makes. The name that survived them was Dyatlov. But this night is not only about cold, it is about something seen above them in the sky. Something bright, something silent, something that turned a mountain disaster into a mystery that never truly died.
It was close to midnight. The wind kept hammering the tent like a living thing trying to tear its way inside. Breath turned to mist, fingers were numb, faces were exhausted from the trek, and yet something worse than fatigue moved among them. That strange feeling that comes before catastrophe, the feeling that the world has gone wrong in a way you cannot explain. One of them lifted his head and asked, "Do you hear that?" Everyone went still. At first, there was only the shriek of the storm. Then, beneath it, something else, a faint hum, metallic, far away, as if the sound were coming not across the mountain, but down from the sky itself.
They tried to dismiss it. Fatigue can do strange things. Cold can bend the senses. But then the thin cloth of the tent changed color. Not moonlight, not reflected snow. A dim orange glow slid across the fabric like a stain of fire. One of them leaned toward the opening and looked outside. He froze for a second too long. Then he backed away slowly, his face drained of all color.
"There's something above us." A simple sentence, but in that place, on that mountain, it sounded like a death sentence. They crowded toward the opening, careful not to expose too much of the interior. And there it was, in the black sky above the white slope, a circular light. Too large to be a star, too close to be a planet, too steady to be lightning. It pulsed. Orange, then white, then yellow edged with red, and each pulse rolled over the snow below like a silent wave. The worst part was not its brightness, it was the silence. No engine roar, no explosion, no falling debris, just a hovering sphere of light moving with the calm confidence of something that knew exactly where it was going. Some tried to tell themselves it was a military test. Others thought of a rare atmospheric phenomenon, but one of them, perhaps the one with the strongest instincts, felt something more terrifying than either explanation. The light was not passing over. It had stopped, almost above them, as if the whole mountain now sat beneath its gaze. The glow intensified, not all at once, gradually, intentionally, like a hand turning a hidden dial, watching human eyes struggle to adjust. Someone covered their face, someone said their vision hurt, another swore there was a shape moving inside the light itself, long and wrong, not human in proportion. Nobody answered him because nobody wanted to hear the words said aloud.
Outside, the wind struck the tent in a single violent blow. The poles shuddered. Snow dumped heavily against one side. In that instant, something changed. The glowing object descended, only slightly, but enough to make it feel dangerously close. Suddenly, the tent no longer felt like a shelter. It felt like a trap. One voice shouted, "Get out!" Another shouted, "Wait!" But fear in a confined space cuts through reason faster than any blade.
That is when the tent was slashed from the inside, not because they were irrational, but because terror made the normal exit feel too slow. One knife stroke, then another, and a black opening split the fabric. They stumbled out into the frozen dark, some barefoot, some in underwear, some without jackets, all of them moving as if chased by fire, though what followed them was cold, and what watched them was light.
The snow was deep. The wind came from every direction. In the first seconds of their escape, some of them must have believed they would return in a minute, retrieve boots, coats, cameras, and supplies. But when they looked back, the object was still there. It did not dive, it did not attack, and that made it worse. It simply hovered, almost still, as if it knew exactly where they were going and had all the time in the world.
"Don't look at it," one of them said, but he looked at it himself. The light did something to the senses. Stare too long, and the world seemed to warp. Direction lost its meaning. The slope became uncertain. The distance to the trees felt longer than it should have been. The mountain itself seemed stretched and distorted, as though space had been subtly pulled out of shape. Every glance toward the trees felt like hope. Every glance upward felt like drowning.
At last, they reached the tree line. For the first time, they felt a trace of protection. The tent was now high above them, a dead mark on the slope. Someone tried to build a fire. Someone tried to force logic back into the night. A rocket, an aircraft, ball lightning. Words were spoken but not believed, because the light had not vanished. It still showed between the branches, farther away now, but present, pulsing, watching.
The long night began there. Cold ate through fingers and toes. Wind entered the chest like knives. The small fire kept weakening. One person insisted they had to return to the tent at once. Another refused, saying the thing was still above them. The group did not break apart in anger, but in despair. That is what the unknown does to people. Some want to flee, some want to explain, some freeze in place until death chooses for them.
Brim. Two of them began climbing back up toward the tent. Maybe they were the bravest. Maybe they were simply the most rational. With poor clothing, failing muscles, and almost no visibility, it was an impossible ascent. Each step fought the wind, the slope, and the fear pulling them backward. Yet they tried. Somewhere on that climb, something happened. No one can know exactly what. Did the light descend again? Did they hear the hum from above, closer than before? Did they lose all sense of direction? What is certain is that they never made it back. Below the trees, the others tried to dig shelter in the snow. Frozen hands clawed into snow and soil. Exhausted bodies slipped toward a narrow ravine near a stream hidden under ice. And there, in the deepest part of the dark, the object above released its strongest pulse of the night. Orange radiance spilled over the snow and turned the forest into a feverish dream. One of them screamed. Another said they saw figures standing along the ridge above them. But when the others looked, there was nobody there. Only shadows, only light, only human minds cracking under pressure beyond endurance. Somewhere between truth and hallucination, the end began. Some fell into the ravine. Some tried to pull the others back. Some struck rock hidden beneath the snow. This is where the injuries became worse than exposure. Bones broke, chests collapsed, heads slammed against stone. But even pain, even trauma, was not the true final horror of that night. The final horror was the realization that the light was still there. Not helping, not striking, not intervening in any human sense. It only witnessed, it only observed.
Why is it just standing there? No one answered. Maybe because there was no answer. Maybe because the answer was more frightening than the question. If it was military, then it watched them die. If it was natural, then nature possessed a kind of deliberate cruelty. And if it was something else entirely, something unknown, then the night above our world is not entirely ours. There are things that pass over us, see us, and continue on without ever considering us important.
Shortly before dawn, the light began to fade. No explosion, no fiery trail, no dramatic departure. It dimmed slowly, as if an eye were closing. The sky returned to ordinary black. The mountain returned to ordinary terror. But by then, it no longer mattered. The mountain had already taken what it wanted. silence came back heavier than before. The fire died, and the cold finished the work.
Days later, searchers found the tent cut open from the inside. They found footprints leading downslope toward the forest. They found bodies scattered as if the group had tried in their final hours to write a plan of survival across the snow with their own movement. Every clue opened one door and closed 10 others. Why had they fled so suddenly? Why did some never return to the tent even though it wasn't impossibly far away? Why were some injuries so severe? And why around all of it did the reports remain strange lights, glowing spheres, fireballs crossing the Ural sky in that same period?
There are many explanations: avalanche, katabatic winds, military testing, mass panic, a rare atmospheric event. Each one carries some logic. But in the stories that survive for generations, logic is never enough. Sometimes truth does not die because evidence is missing. Sometimes truth dies because what happened was larger than language itself, larger than the report, larger than the phrase cause of death. And perhaps on that night in the Urals, they were not killed only by cold or by the mountain. Perhaps they were killed by something they saw, something the human mind was never meant to fully endure.
And if that light still passes over the Urals even now, then the real question is not, what happened to them? The real question is, what was looking down at them from above, and why did it choose that night?